Orange is the New Black is where we dive in. Every episode we'll discuss, even the scenes that made us cuss. So follow me, join the spree. I try to space for 2 E's. Spoilers everywhere, so be warned. Super fans, please come on board. Susie's special mind and all these ideas make us rethink if everything's truly as it is. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Nah. Oh, 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 oh.
Hello, and welcome to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a rewatch podcast for the Netflix TV show Orange is the New Black. Every Tuesday, I'll be recapping one episode of the show with you, but please keep in mind that this is a rewatch podcast. That means that there may be spoilers about things that happen in the future episodes, so please be warned. This is definitely a spoiler zone. On today's episode of our Orange is the New Black rewatch, we will be discussing Season 1, Episode 2, titled Tit Punch. IMDb's synopsis of this episode says, after accidentally insulting the prison chef, the kitchen staff refuses to feed Piper. So we're going to see the continuation from the first episode where Piper made that blunder with Red, insulting the food to her face, and she got that bloody tampon as a meal. We're going to continue that story because Red is going to continue to starve out Piper, which is why if I were to retitle this episode, I would call it The Starving. When I think of this episode, that's what I immediately think of. It's the episode where Piper was being starved out by Red. So I would call it The Starving. In this episode, we're going to get our first of a few Red backstories. I really love the backstories because it kind of helps us to see how these women became to be who they are. Red's backstory is no different. It definitely gives us a look into some of the things that have happened in her past. It gives us some context as to some of the things that she's been through that brought her to this moment and kind of the things that shaped her to become the woman that she is today. This episode is directed by Uta Briesewitz. I really apologize if that's incorrect pronunciation. I believe it's Uta Briesewitz. Uta Briesewitz is famous for her work on The Wire, and she's actually directed 4 episodes of Orange, so we will see her again. This episode is written by Marco Ramirez, and he's famous for his work on The Twilight Zone, the new Twilight Zone. And he's done 2 episodes of our show here, Orange is the New Black, so we will see him again as well. Now, IMDb rates this episode at a 7.9, so that is up from last week's episode of a 7.7. So according to IMDb, this episode is better than last week's episode. I guess we can be the judge of that. As always, at the end of this pod, I will give my personal episode rating. So I definitely encourage you guys to go ahead and write your episode ratings in the comments so that we can get an idea of what we the people actually think the rating is on this episode. So let's get into it. The episode opens up and we are already in the past. We see a man holding court in Red's store. He is just having all the attention. There's a table full of men and a table full of women, and they are all just cracking up at everything that he is saying. Meanwhile, Red is doing what she does best, cooking up food for the whole group. So while Red is really comfortable in the background doing the cooking, her husband is encouraging her to go talk to those people. Apparently, they're really important people within their community, so he wants her to get in good with them. It's supposed to be good for the family, good for the business. So he's encouraging Red to get out of her comfort zone and go make friends with those people over there. Red says, I've been cooking all day. I smell like onions. She's like, I do not want to go talk to the wife. I don't want to go talk to these people. I feel like they're so much different than me. She's just not feeling it. She seems to feel a little bit insecure, like she's not going to fit in with them off the bat. But our Red that we know so very well, before she goes over, she makes sure to groom herself in the mirror, make sure that her hair is in place because we know that our Red, she is very prideful. So she's going to make sure that she looks her best while she goes to make her first impression with these people. We're then sent right back from that flashback to the prison, present day, where Red is in the kitchen here preparing food for the inmates. I just noticed as the credits are rolling that Danielle Brooks is listed as a guest star. So that makes me think that she wasn't a main character at this point in the show, which is surprising to me. If you don't know, Danielle Brooks plays Taystee. Like I said in episode 1, in my opinion, Taystee is one of the leads of the show. So it's just very interesting to me that she was not even a full-time actor on the show at this time. She is a guest star. So shout out to Danielle Brooks for securing that bag and getting Taystee on the main stage of this show because Taystee's story was super important in my opinion. Red says that she's proud of the fact that she gave Piper a bloody tampon. My goodness. The next thing that we see is Piper talking to Mr. Healy, looking completely dejected and like, listen, I have to go to another prison. I think Piper's done. She's been there one day and she's already done. Healy's like, this is the Radisson. You don't like your room. I have to move you. I don't think so. This is prison. This is where you are. This is what it is. Like, girl, stop. Mr. Healy is asking Piper for more information about why she feels like she needs to change prisons. He starts to ask her more questions, asking her things like, well, what did they do to you? Give me specifics. Did somebody bother you out there? He gets out his pen and he starts to write things down, and Piper's realizing, oh crap, if I say something, I'm probably going to get somebody in trouble, and then that will make trouble for myself. So yeah, maybe I should just shut up right now. So she changes her tune and she's like, you know what? It's fine. I just freaked out. I'll be just fine, you know? Then Mr. Healy's like, all right, fine. That's fine. He puts his pen away and he's like, all right, well, you're going to be late for orientation. So Piper zooms out of there and runs into the orientation room, where she is faced with the fact that Alex is there. Alex eyes a chair next to her as if to say, you know, why don't you sit here? And Piper, with nonverbal communication, says, yeah, no, I'm not sitting next to you. I'd rather go sit in this broken down chair in the back than sit next to you. Other people that we know that are in this orientation room, like we said, we have Piper and Alex. We also have Janae Watson. We have Dayanara Diaz. And we also have Leanne Taylor. So we have Piper, Alex, Daya, Janae, and Leanne in this new orientation group. I will notice that while most of them are in orange, as if they are brand new to the prison, the two that are not are Alex and Leanne. So I'm wondering if maybe they came from a different prison, or they've been here a little bit longer, or what's going on. But they are not in the orange as if they're new. They are already in their khaki. So they're all sitting there in these little broken down chairs, and the guard in the front is playing a video on an old school TV, like an old school tube TV, not a flat screen, like on the cart that they would bring out in the 90s in school. You know, hey, we're watching a movie in class today. That kind of cart with a big old school TV, and they're playing an old orientation video from what looks like the 80s for the ladies to get acclimated to prison. The lady on the orientation video states that they like to keep facilities that are secure, humane, and cost effective, to which Janae starts laughing. Like, okay, give me a break. The lady on the video says that they have night school classes offered 3 nights a week. She shows people doing aerobics. And she states that clinical visits are offered at the inmate's request, as if they have good health care in this prison, which we will find out that that is a total lie. So then they move on from the video, and they have actual guards in the room doing a demonstration about violence within the prison. We see Porn Stash, aka Mendez, or I guess I should say Mendez, aka Porn Stash. Like I said, I think of him as Porn Stash before I think of him as Mendez, so I probably will use Porn Stash more often than not. But he's one and the same. Mendez, aka Porn Stash, is at the front of the class with a pipe. He's explaining to them how a pipe can be used as a violent weapon, as if they need to know that. The doctor is saying that suicidal thoughts will come to them in prison. He literally says that the voices will come. Daya looks a little bit uncomfortable with this prospect, which is interesting considering her trajectory on this show. Then we see Caputo come up, and he's telling the new inmates that they will be getting bunks soon, new uniforms soon. He also makes a little side comment that, you know, is unnecessary in my opinion, but this is early Caputo. Like I said, he will be changing. But he's like, you know, you need to put your correct size on the ordering forms. No hip hop hands. And then he's like, yes, I'm looking at you, to Janae Watson, which is racist, in my opinion. There's no going around that, because he's calling them hip hop pants, and he's literally targeting the one Black person in the room when he's talking about that. So yeah, this is definitely an instance where Caputo is showing a little bit of his own bias, and it's not cute. I'm glad that he evolves. Everything that we're seeing here with Mendez, aka Porn Stash, is him basically showing the women how to do harm to others. First he was with the pipe, now he's with his razor blade and toothbrush. So we're seeing that he is definitely not an all right in the head person. He's a little bit of a sick pup over here. He does let them know that the women who made those weapons are now either in the SHU, which is the solitary housing unit, or they're down at Max with added time, which we'll get there. He goes on to say that the women who have been sent to Max, their lives are basically over. Wow. Yeah. Max is not great. It's not a good place to be. It's definitely not a good place to try to get out of. There are a lot of traps down there to kind of encourage people to get more and more time. It's a really bad cycle. We then meet Natalie Figueroa. She is the first woman that we meet in this orientation class, and she introduces herself as the executive assistant to the warden. She tells them that she tries to visit the prison often and to please see her if they have any concerns with regards to women's issues. She assures them that she will handle their concerns personally, to which Alex says, yeah, she will. Like, she's already got the hots for Fig. Daya's like, you know what? I have a question actually. And Fig completely dismisses her. She's like, yeah, well, I'm only here today as a formality, so bye. Daya is so innocent in the beginning here. It is crazy the way her story goes, but she is just so innocent here. She just wants to know what's going on, like it's the first day of school. The next thing that we see is Piper in line at the cafeteria. She's face to face with Gina, and she's like, hey, can I get some food, with her eyes? And Gina's like, next, and completely ignores her, skips her in line, and gives food to the next person behind her. Piper's like, seriously? Nobody behind the counter will give her any food, including Norma, who we finally see here. Red's in the back like, yep, I did that. Don't mess with me, you know? With her face, of course. So Piper puts her tray down, and she's on her way out of the cafeteria when she's stopped by Porn Stash. He's like, you can't leave here right now. So she's like, well, they're not letting me eat. And he says, that sounds like a whole lot of your problem. And then he yells to the whole cafeteria, we don't leave lunch till lunch is over. Like, thanks for bringing attention to the situation here, making her feel really great on her day 2. As Piper turns around to go back into the cafeteria, he starts checking her out from behind, and then he pushes her to push her forward to go back into the cafeteria, showing our first little bit of light violence within the prison. I mean, yeah, it was just a shove, but he really should not be putting hands on her. That was inappropriate. So Piper walks back in the cafeteria, and she's looking at the tables. We're seeing Leanne at a table. We see the Latinas at a table. We see Daya, Gloria, and Maria sitting there. We also see Crazy Eyes, aka Suzanne, sitting at a table. Or maybe I should say Suzanne, aka Crazy Eyes. Later on, we do get to know the human part of Suzanne, outside of this caricature that we're presented with in season 1. Suzanne scoots over when she sees Piper, like, oh, you can sit next to me. She's got a little bit of a crush on Piper. Piper's like, I'd rather not. And Lorna Morello grabs her, like, come sit with us, not with Crazy Eyes. So Piper finds herself at the white table with Yoga Jones, Morello, and Anita DeMarco. Piper is complaining about how she's getting starved out, and she's like, I didn't expect to get punished while I'm being punished. Piper's like, listen, I'm just going to apologize. Like, people make mistakes. We're human. People say stupid things all the time. I'm just going to apologize. She can get over it. Like, she's got to understand, right? They're all looking at her like, good luck with that. I don't think Red's going to be very understanding. The next scene that we see is Daya walking through the Latina section of the prison. We're seeing a very pregnant Maria talking with Gloria. Daya walks over to her mom's bed, and she's met with Maritza. Maritza's like, who are you? And Daya's all in her face like, her daughter. Who are you? And Maritza's all in her face like, her daughter. So Maritza apparently is Aleida's prison daughter, and Daya is her actual daughter. So they're meeting for the first time. I love that line. Daya says to her mom, what's the matter? You don't want to hit me again? And her mom says, from here on out, this place will hit you for me. And that line is definitely going to ring true throughout the rest of this show. This place knocks Daya down again and again and again. And we'll see how she deals with that. Daya is complaining about being in the orange. She feels uncomfortable. She feels like there's almost a target on her back. She feels like it stands out too much. She said it feels like she's glowing in the dark, and the guard with the mustache is staring at her. So Porn Stash is staring at her. And it makes her feel uncomfortable. Her mom kind of dismisses her concerns, and she's like, well, since when are you upset with that? Like, there's already the layers of this trauma within this family. Right here, you see the cracks. What kind of mother says that to her daughter? But anyways. So Daya swallows that, whatever. That's her mom. She goes on to say, do you have any extra khakis that she can borrow so she doesn't have to wear the orange? Her mom responds with, no, well, at least not in your size. And again, why would she say that to her daughter? That is so mean and rude. And in front of somebody, a stranger, it's just not cool. Aleida is definitely showing a lot of the dysfunction within their family. But Daya is used to that from her mom, so she just takes it and starts to walk away. Aleida warns Daya to not be in such a rush to get out of the orange. She tells her that once she's in the khaki, she's old news. The next thing that we see is Taystee whispering in the library. At first, we don't know who she's talking to, but then we come to find out that she's talking to Healy. What she's doing is basically giving him the lowdown on what's going on with Piper and Red. Taystee says, white girl said something nasty about Red's food. Then Red sent her a message because white girl better recognize. Like, what in the world? Just the way that she tells the story is pretty funny. It's definitely done in a comical way. After she finishes telling Healy what's going on, she does confirm. She's like, this ain't gonna get Red in trouble, right? We see that even though Taystee is technically snitching, she's still concerned because she doesn't want to get anybody in trouble. She follows up by saying, I ain't no snitch. When she literally was just snitching, but I'm gonna give Taystee a pass on that. Come to find out, she was snitching on Red all for just a small box of candy. Because in prison, it's hard to get anything to make your day good. So maybe that little bit of candy is just what she needs for a little bit of sunshine in her days. And honestly, I'm not mad at it. These girls got to do whatever they got to do to get by and survive in this place. The next thing that we see is somebody getting their legs shaved by another inmate, and we come to find out that it's Red. She's just sitting there in the bathroom reading a book. The book is titled Freshman Year and Other Unnatural Disasters by Meredith Zetlin. I'm going to always reference the books that I'm seeing in this show, by the way. Maybe we'll get a book list going to see what the creators are trying to tell us with some of these books. I know for sure towards the end of the series, the books and the things that were said and seen were very intentional. So I'm curious to see if some of these things from the earlier seasons are also very intentional. So Red is sitting there basically getting a full spa treatment on the counter by the prison sinks. We have Norma there shaving her legs for her. She's just laying with her legs up, reading a book, head on towel, like she is the queen of this prison, okay? Red is running things. It's clear. And it's really a great shot because she's laying literally below two big red signs that say no sitting. So not only is she sitting, but she's laying, like with absolute disregard to the rules, because she is the queen of the prison. Piper walks in on Red, getting her legs shaved, reading her book. So Piper's like, is this a bad moment? Red says to her, one moment. Like, give me a second. Please don't interrupt. I am busy. So Piper comes in very humbly, trying to apologize. She's like, about what I said yesterday, it was careless and it was rude and I'm really, really sorry. She's like, I appreciate everything that you do. I can't imagine how much work it takes. Red is like half listening to her. She's like, yeah, whatever. More focused on what Norma's doing than what Piper's actually saying. Piper tells her that she respects what she does and all of the effort that she puts into it, the pride that she takes in her work. And so Piper shares that if someone insulted her work, to which Red cuts her off and she's like, what work? What is your work? So Piper tells her that she makes artisanal bath products, to which again, nobody's impressed. Nobody cares, Piper, but good for you for getting into Barney's. To be honest, I'm going to give it to Piper. She really gave a really heartfelt apology. It was very sincere. It was honest. It was respectful. I thought it was a really good apology. Too bad I don't think Red is going to accept it. Red says to her, you seem sweet. You really do, honey. But then she goes on to say, she's like, but I can't do shit with I'm sorry. Damn, she is just so blunt. She is sticking to her guns here. Red tells Piper that there are rules in this place. She says that the first rule is that the second that you're perceived as weak, you already are. So this tells us that Red values being seen as a strong person. Piper seems almost at a loss, like she's almost going to cry. She says, what do you want me to do? To which Red says, you're a smart girl. And she starts to like moan and get uncomfortable because her back is hurting. She goes on to say, figure something out. So right there, we see that Piper takes note that Red has a bad back. And I don't know what she thinks she's going to do about it, but she does see that Red has a problem. We'll see how she decides to try to solve it. So we go from the scene of Red getting her legs shaved to Taystee and Poussey sitting in the common room looking at a magazine talking about, damn, that girl's got some nice legs. So again, we got a nice transition from what's happening in one scene leading into what's going on in the next scene, which I think is such good writing. It's so cute. I love it. Then we meet Flocka. She's going into the freezer in the common room and she's pulling out a king cone. She's like, what the heck is this? And Taystee gets up. She's like, hey, it's my treat. Just leave it. I'm saving it. Flocka's like, you can't just leave your sticky ice cream stuff in here. This is a common space. It's going to drip and get gross all over everything. And Taystee's like, it ain't just ice cream. It's a king cone. She is very much about this. She wants it to be respected. And she doesn't really care what Flocka has to say about it. When Taystee says it's a king cone, Flocka knocks that thing across the room out of her hand, starting a whole fight. Now Taystee and Flocka are fighting on the floor, knockdown, drag out, fighting. Of course, this is when Piper walks in and she's like, oh my God, my first prison fight, you know? Absolutely no guards in the room. No guards even show up until after the other inmates already get the girls up off the floor. So the guards are good for what? What exactly are they keeping safe and secure? Certainly not the inmates. And the one guard that comes in, he sounds like somebody's dad. He's like, please tell me y'all are not fighting over ice cream. Like, oh my God, are you serious right now? To which Taystee again clarifies, it's a king cone. Like, it's not just an ice cream, okay? It is a king cone. And now it's on the floor, ruined. But Piper, who is starving, is eyeing it like, oh my God, can I finally have some food? We don't see her eat it, but we see her thinking about it. The next thing that we see is Piper trying to get some sleep in her dorm. We see all of her roommates in there, and it's kind of noisy, definitely making those of us who have never been to prison realize exactly how uncomfortable it might be to sleep with 4, 5, 6 other people in a room. This show uses language that is no longer acceptable, and I feel like for the Rewatch podcast, we have to be true to the show. So I will say the words that they use. However, I will acknowledge the fact that some of these words that they use are no longer acceptable and are not okay. I don't necessarily agree with these words, especially this one. So Nikki says to Piper, you know, I'd give you a pretzel, but the walls have eyes and I'm not retarded. And again, I don't condone the use of that word. However, it's used many times in many kind of important contexts within the show. So I will use it how they use it when I'm quoting it. However, I do not like that word, and I don't think that people should be referred to as that word. There are all kinds of people in the world, all kinds of different brains, and that is one of those derogatory terms that I don't think is appropriate. Personally, I digress. So basically, Nikki's like, I can't give you anything to eat because I don't want to get in trouble. Miss Rosa tells Piper that when she first got here, she had problems like her. There was a disagreement that she had with another inmate, but they brawled, they fought. Miss Rosa goes on to tell Piper that that's how you get things settled around here. You have to fight. So Miss Rosa goes on to say that if she had won, she would have been La Jefa, meaning the boss, meaning, did she fight Red? That's what it sounds like to me, but I don't think it was ever clarified. Miss Rosa says, thank God I got cancer. No one fucks with cancer, which is how we find out that Miss Rosa has cancer. Since she's gotten sick, she gets some accommodations that make her time there a little bit more bearable, and people don't mess with her. So that's why she's saying she's glad that she got cancer, because nobody messes with cancer. They kind of just leave her alone and let her live. The last thing that we see there is Piper, again, trying to go to sleep, but her stomach is growling. And, you know, it's hard to go to sleep when your stomach is growling. So that leads us into another Piper backstory scene where we're seeing that one time when she and her fiance Larry were doing a master cleanse, purposely not eating. Basically, the plan with the master cleanse is that they're going to drink just lemonade and put cayenne pepper in it, and that's the cleanse. Doesn't sound very healthy to me, but this is what the plan is. So Larry is just griping about how hard it's going to be. It's going to turn them into social pariahs. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to carry around a lemonade cup. Piper's like, listen, you don't have to do it, but this is what I'm going to be doing for the next week. You can do it if you want, but this is what I'm doing. In the end, Larry decides to do it with her. So they're both going to do the cleanse. The next thing that we see is Larry coming to visit Piper in prison for the first time. He sees that they have to go through security. They have to get scanned and checked for weapons and things. He goes up to the window to give his ID in, and he's met with the same guard who took Piper back when she first went into the prison. C.O. Bell. When she looks up at him, she goes, oh, it's the fiance. So C.O. Bell looks at his ID, looks at the list, and says, oh, no Larry Bloom here. She's like, oh, this list looks like it's from last week. And he's like, okay, so where's this week's list? C.O. Bell takes her sweet time and addressing this issue. She's too busy reading the newspaper. It looks like she's reading the comics. She eventually calls another office and finds out where the other list is. She doesn't give him any communication as to who she's calling, what she's doing, if she's checking. She literally just tells him to have a seat. I just think that that's so dismissive and kind of shows the attitude that the COs have around here. You know, these are people trying to see their loved ones, and they don't really need to get that kind of an attitude or have that kind of disregard when they're just trying to see their loved ones. We hear at this time over the loudspeaker that you were allowed 2 hugs during visitation, one during arrival and one during departure. We're going to see that throughout most of our time in the prison. Larry looks over in the visitors area and he sees a sign that says smuggling, it's not worth it, with a picture of somebody putting a phone up somebody's butt. We're going to see a lot of that in this show. A lot of smuggling, a lot of people putting things up their butts. Yeah. Foreshadowing. The next thing that we see is a group of the women looking really excited out of the prison's windows as they're seeing their loved ones. You know, they're showing each other their loved ones like, oh, look, that's my husband. Oh, that's my son, you know. They just want to bridge their lives. They're seeing their outside lives and they want to show their inside friends a piece of their outside lives. They're super excited around this window. That's when we see CO Bennett, our new CO, come over and kind of disperse the crowd. He's like, all right, let's just calm down. Let's not crowd. And so as the women start to leave, he says, thank you. Thanks for listening. And honestly, that shouldn't be a noteworthy thing, but it is, because most of the guards don't say thank you, common courtesy to these women. Because Bennett is new, I think he hasn't been tainted by the guard culture just yet. So he still has some sort of human decency to him. This is when we see our first interaction between Daya and Bennett. Daya comes over to him and she asks if she can have some gum. Bennett says, sorry, I can't do that. Inmates are not allowed. Daya responds with, oh, I get it. You can't give special treatment. Bennett responds with, yeah, it'll look funny, like I liked you. To which Daya says, well, don't you? Which is very flirty to say to a guard. She just throws it right out there. Don't you? Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? Don't ya? That's Daya's energy right here. But Bennett ignores it and just walks off. Says nothing. Daya looks very satisfied with herself, though, has a little smirk on her face as she walks off in the opposite direction. So then we see Piper enter the visitation room for the first time as she goes to meet up with Larry. So they hug and kiss when she first gets in the room, and the guard cuts it short, like, okay, that's enough. So even though they are allowed to hug when they first see each other, the guards try to limit that time as well. Larry is trying to pump her up, saying that she looks great. Who knew you could rock orange? And he's like, even your face looks super cheekbony. Piper's like, yeah, well, I haven't eaten since Wednesday. So she's losing weight in her face because she has been getting starved out, which is why I would call this episode The Starving. She tells Larry that she hasn't eaten since Wednesday because she's starving me out. And he says, she who? But that's when Piper notices that there are vending machines outside of the visitation area. And she's like, oh my gosh, do you have change? He's like, what do you want? And Piper says, anything, just anything. But by the time they get over there, they notice that the machine lights are turned off and there's a piece of tape over the money slot that says it's out of order. So no, Piper will not be able to get anything from the vending machine today. Piper starts knocking the machine in frustration, which prompts the guard to say, inmate, away from the machine. Larry takes note that she was just called inmate, which is new for him. Piper sounds like she's crazy, but she's not. She's telling Larry, this is her. She did this. The woman who runs the kitchen. She did this. She made it so I couldn't get anything from the vending machines either. Piper tells Larry that the woman who's running the kitchen, Red, is starving her out because Piper insulted the food. Larry knows his girl because Larry's like, oh, Piper, your foot and mouth disease? Yes, Piper for sure has a foot and mouth problem. Piper's like, I think I'm gonna have to fight her. She's like, how am I supposed to prison fight an old Russian lady with back problems? Piper is kind of tiptoeing off the deep end here. She feels really hopeless. So Larry tries to comfort her. He's rubbing her hands, he's rubbing her face, her hair. And the guard yells, no touching. So, you know, even simple emotional comforts that you can get from your loved one, you cannot get even when you're visiting while in prison, which honestly, I think is depriving them of some necessary human contact. It's sad. Piper looks over in her despair and she notices that Alex is also in the visiting room. Alex is visiting with a woman, a redhead. We don't know her, But Alex looks back at Piper. Piper looks at Alex. They still haven't spoken to each other, but they are definitely noticing each other. That's real, Piper. Piper says to Larry, please tell me that you're not watching Mad Men without me, which as a person in a couple, I can totally relate to that. Sometimes we have our couple shows that we watch together, and I would be pretty upset if my partner was watching our show without me. Because, like, why are you watching ahead? We're supposed to be watching together. Piper makes Larry promise that he's not watching Mad Men without her, that they will binge watch it once she gets out with takeout and enjoy it together. He promises. He says, of course, 100%. That's a lie. Spoiler alert, that's a lie. And just like that, the visit is over. As Larry's walking out, we see Trisha plug the machines back in and take the out of order signs down. She looks over at Piper and she's like, sorry. So yeah, it was Red's doing. Red directed Trisha to unplug the machines during the visitation time so that Piper would not have access to food even then. So Red is for sure starving Piper out completely. The next thing that we see is Gina and Norma waking Red up out of her sleep. Honestly, I think that's kind of a dangerous thing to do. But they do. They wake Red up out of her sleep. Red's like, what's wrong? Gina responds with, Betty's dead. We don't know who Betty is. We're about to find out. In the next scene, we find out that Betty is a freezer. The kitchen freezer is dead. It's done. It's kaput. And so now they have to cook up everything in there so it doesn't go to waste. We are also met in this scene with another guard that will be big in this show. This is our introduction to Joel Luschek. Luschek is a horrible guard. Luschek is entertaining. Sure, he's funny for us, the audience, to watch. I enjoy watching him. He is very funny. However, he is a horrible person. He is horrible to these women, most of them. He does have a soft spot for a couple of them, but to most of them, he is horrible. Even the ones that he has a soft spot for, in his inaction, in his laziness, in his refusal to take accountability, he causes so much harm. So much harm to these women. In general, I am not a fan of Luschek, but I will acknowledge that he is funny. He's very funny on this show. But as a person, he's a horrible person. Horrible. He makes me so mad, but we'll get there. So apparently the freezer is giving off a smell, and the inmates ask, what's that smell? And Luschek responds with, it's Freon. He explains to them how some people use it to huff and that it doesn't give such a great high and all this other stuff about getting high off of Freon. He's telling this to a group of addicts, which I don't think is very healthy. It seems like he's just giving them ideas of something else to do for drugs, which is going to be unhealthy for them. Oh, gosh. Luschek. So Red says, Thanksgiving's coming twice this year, ladies. Spread the word. Because they have to go and cook everything in that freezer now, or as much of it as they can, so that it doesn't go to waste. So in the middle of all this chaos in the kitchen where Red is trying to clear out the freezer and get everything cooked, Piper interjects, which bad timing, Piper, but she doesn't know. So Piper walks in the kitchen and she says to Red, all right, I know what I have to do. And Red's like, what? Piper says, I'm not a fighter, but go ahead. Piper's like, just hit me and get it over with. Red is ignoring her. Red is saying, I'm a little bit busy, I don't have time for this. What are you talking about? We're not fight you for what? No. Piper insists. She's like, I'm not leaving until you do it. Like, just hit me and get it over with. That's when Red finally stops all of her movement in the kitchen and prepping to cook the food. She goes to Piper and she says, you want me to hit you? Piper says, yes. Red responds with, okay, get ready. Piper's bracing for the punch, And everybody turns to look, including Luschek, who, as a guard, you would think he would be trying to stop this, but no. He is literally as interested in it as the rest of the inmates in the room. So they're all turning to look to see, oh my God, what's about to go on here? Red continues and says, you called my food disgusting. Red goes on to say, you're not getting hazed. You're not getting harassed. You're getting starved to death. And she pushes her against the wall. She tells Piper that you'll leave Litchfield as a skeleton in a body bag. And then she says, pow, as if that was the hit. Now I've hit you. Then Red tells Piper to march your yuppie ass out of my kitchen. Red is not to be messed with. As Piper leaves the kitchen, Red goes on to say to her, slowly, so you don't burn too many calories. Oh my gosh, Red, that is so brutal. Hilarious, but brutal. So in the next scene, we're back in Red's backstory. If you remember at the beginning of the episode, we saw Red and her husband trying to impress the people in their store. In this scene, we're seeing Red actually out with the ladies from the store. So I guess she did get in good with them because she's out on a walk with them. But they're all walking and they all have their own vibe, and Red kind of doesn't fit in. Red's running her mouth and she's telling them a joke about the farmer and the penguin. This is a joke that we will hear many times in this show. It's a recurring joke. This is the first time that we're hearing it. Red says, and the farmer looks at his wife and then back at the penguin. And finally the penguin goes, he's not an eggplant, man. He's retarded. Again, I'm using this word because that is what she says. And this is a recurring word that is used in this show. I do not agree with the use of this word. So that's the punchline of the joke. And Red cracks up full belly laugh. And all the other women are either cringing or just looking confused or just completely unamused. They don't think it's very funny at all. Red says to them, do you get it? It's because, and one of the women cuts her off and she's like, yeah, we get it. Another one of the women says, my brother was retarded, which again, I have a cousin who was raised like a sister who had Down syndrome. So that word is not a word that I like to use because it makes me think of her. And I know how much harm that does to the people who do struggle with Down syndrome every day. It's not cool to put people down and call them names. And this is just another example of that. So the one woman is visibly offended because she's telling Red that, listen, my brother was retarded, so I don't like the use of that word. And you know what, girl? Same. Red seems genuinely apologetic. She's like, I'm so sorry to hear that, you know? Like, she didn't mean anything by it. It's just a joke. Red still keeps trying to go along and keep it light. She says, my husband's a little slow. He says he was dropped on his head when he was born. Just my luck. And, you know, she's trying to keep it light, but these women are very much not feeling her vibe at all. The main woman of the group interjects and says, I kind of slept wrong. I don't feel so great. Let's cut this walk a little bit short today. So the main woman of the group says, we're close to your house, right, Red? And she's like, yeah, it's right over there. And so Red's like, okay, cool. So I'm going to head home. I'll see you guys same time tomorrow. And the main woman is like, we'll let you know. It reminds me of Mean Girls and the Plastics. Like, that is the Regina George of the group, and she is not feeling letting Red into the group at all. Very mean. Red's got her hand up for a high five, and they completely ignore her, leave her hanging, and she does look dejected. Like, wow, you guys just left me like that? I don't think she really gets that she's not quite fitting in with the group, but she wants so desperately to fit in with them. In the next scene, we're back in the prison and Luschek is getting shocked by the freezer. That's when Red goes off on a mission. She looks like she's on the warpath. She literally goes into the staff halls and busts into the staff bathroom, literally while Mr. Healy is on the toilet. Bennett goes in after her, telling her she's out of bounds. She does not care. She continues and tells Healy that she needs a new freezer. To which Healy is like, we can talk about this later. Like, I'm literally on the pooper right now. Can we talk about this later? And Red's like, yeah, well, you've been saying that for 3 years. Bennett's like, should I subdue the inmate? And Red turns around and gives him the absolute look of death. Like, are you kidding me right now? I wish you would. I wish you would try to subdue me right now. Red is basically threatening Healy, saying that if you don't get me a new freezer, I'm walking. Telling him, remember the last time I gave back the keys to the kitchen? I guess it was a complete disaster because Healy says, I'll see what I can do. Red says thank you and walks out. When Red walks out of the bathroom, she says, ugh, it smells like a dying animal is in there. And Mr. Caputo is walking behind her and responds, a dying animal or just a man who eats your food? Red turns around to him and she's like, you know what? Forget you two. Poor Red. As she's walking away, she's again holding her back because we know Red suffers from back pain. We get another Piper backstory. My favorite. Just kidding. I really don't like Piper backstories. Okay. So this is a Piper backstory. She's in the kitchen with her best friend, Polly. And this is the moment when they decide to start their company. Her friend is making good smelling soaps for fun because she likes doing it. And Piper is the one who says, hey, why don't we turn this into a business? And her friend's like, I just like doing it for fun. But Piper insists. We see this sort of insistent drive for business come from Piper, even within the prison. We'll get to that, though. We'll get to it. Something that's interesting here is that Piper is asking Polly for help making something for Larry's mother. Polly's boyfriend is saying, oh, you're still seeing that guy? I didn't think you were going to last 2 months. And Polly is like, Pete, And he's like, what? You said so too. We'll stick a pin in that because we'll be back to that later as well. What a great friend that Polly is. Not. At the end of this scene, Polly whispers to Piper that she makes lotions too, which leads us back to the prison and we're seeing somebody get lotion from the commissary. The commissary in the prison is where the inmates are able to get luxury items or items that they don't get freely from the prison, things that they have to pay for. So anything that they want outside of what is given to them from the prison, they have to buy from the commissary. So that's where they get their snacks, some personal items, anything that they need for, comforts. The next person that we see at commissary is Poussey. She's asking for headphones for movie night. That's where we first meet Chang. Chang is running the commissary. She works in there. That's her job assignment. Unfortunately, Chang tells Poussey that all of the headphones have sold out. So apparently, if you don't have headphones, you will not be able to hear the movie on movie night, which is horrible. So if you don't have access to money to be able to buy something for commissary, you can't even enjoy the little movie night that they give you at prison, which, that seems tough. Not everybody has access to funds to be able to buy those things. And even if they do, like this instance with Poussey, sometimes those things aren't even available. So Piper and Nikki are waiting online for commissary, and Nikki starts asking Piper about her ex-girlfriend, Alex. To which Piper is like, what did she say to you? Like, how do you even know about our connection? What is going on? What do you know? What did she say? And Nikki's like, she didn't tell me anything. I just know lesbian drama when I see it. So she can see that there's definitely a story there. When Piper gets to the window, she's telling Chang that she should have money there because Larry sent the check, but Chang quickly tells her, nope, it takes 7 days to process. You still have no money. Sorry. But Nikki's telling her that she can buy her something and, she can pay her back. And so Piper's like, can you get me food? And Nikki says, no, absolutely not. We're not doing food. Can't go against Red, but I can help you with something else. So Piper asks her to get her a couple of little items. She asks for rubber gloves, cocoa butter, and a sieve or a strainer. Unfortunately, commissary didn't have any of the things that Piper was looking for. The only thing close that they had was a cup, which Chang was trying to say you could use as a strainer, just figure it out. In prison, the women have to be very creative with trying to get the things that they need because oftentimes the things that they need are not available. So they have to get creative and try to make it happen. The next scene we see is Taystee in the beauty salon getting her hair done by Sophia. We get another line with Danita here with Sophia. She tells Taystee if she calls her hairdo shit one more time that she can take her ass down to Danita. Which again, we don't ever see Danita, but Danita is out here getting crapped on all the time. So Chapman walks into the beauty salon. Piper is like, hey, hi, I'm Chapman. Taystee and Sophia are looking at her like, what the heck are you doing in here? This is the hair salon. What do you want? When she says that she's Chapman, they're like, oh, like we know who you are. Word and news spreads quickly around the prison. So everybody is aware of who Chapman is and that she's being starved out by Red. They look like we don't really want to mess with you right now. So Piper tells Sophia and Taystee that she thinks that they might have something that she needs, to which Taystee makes a joke and she's like, oh yeah, well, J. Crew is around the corner. And Piper's like, haha, no, actually, which was actually really cute from Piper. She's like, no, actually, I'm looking for cocoa butter or shea butter. Do you have one of those? Both Sophia and Taystee are looking at her like, what? Girl, what do you even know about that stuff? How do you know about shea butter and cocoa butter? Because those things are typically used very much culturally by Black people. So they're wondering what this white girl knows about that and what does she want with it? Sophia says to her, ain't you the one they're starving out? And Piper's like, yeah. Sophia responds with, you got some fucked up priorities. Girl, why are you worried about some cocoa butter when you can't eat? But Piper's got a plan. So let's let her cook, as the kids say. Let's let her cook. Sophia lets her know that they work on a barter system. She's telling her that she will give her the cocoa butter or shea butter for 3 shower caps or a round brush, whichever one they have at commissary. Piper says to her, that is no problem. I'll get them to you as soon as my money comes in. To which Taystee exclaims out loud, she's like, yeah, that's not gonna fly. Sorry. Sophia says, credit declined. Absolutely not. We don't do no pay you back later. You can't do that in prison. You might end up getting the short end of the stick and they won't pay you back. So it's same time or no time. Sorry, credit declined. That's when Taystee says, hold up. I got an idea, but you ain't gonna like it, to Piper. The next scene we see is a classic scene with Taystee. Taystee comes strolling out of the doors. She is happy. She has the biggest smile on her face. She's feeling herself. She's tousling her hair. Come to find out, she's got a blonde streak in it. What Piper wasn't going to like about the deal was that she was going to have to give a piece of her hair for an extension for Taystee's hair. She's so happy. She's twirling and showing off in front of all the other inmates. Piper is missing her little piece of hair, but she's very happy that she got her cocoa butter that she needed. So everybody wins. Taystee's got a new little blonde streak in her hair, feeling herself, and Piper's got her cocoa butter. Win-win. In the very next scene, we see Gina reporting back to Red. She's telling her that Piper's asking for some weird stuff. And Red's like, what are you talking about, weird stuff? What is she doing? And so Gina goes on to say that Piper's trying to get her hands on some hot peppers. She's asking Red if she thinks that Piper's going to try to mace her. But Red doesn't seem worried. In the next scene, we see Piper fiddling with some of the supplies that she's gotten. We see DeMarco come in and ask her, you okay, Chapman? She doesn't answer. Miss Rosa kind of gives DeMarco the look like, this girl is crazy. Meanwhile, Suzanne comes in and she's like, are you the new girl? So Piper says, yes, I am. I'm Piper. And you are, and Suzanne goes, I'm Sue. It's short for Susie, which is short for Suzanne. So I guess we are introduced to her as Suzanne initially. However, the term Crazy Eyes takes off as it's her nickname around the prison. That's what most of the prisoners call her in the beginning of the seasons. So that's why we have both names, both Crazy Eyes and Suzanne. I prefer to see her as the beautiful human that she is, and I call her Suzanne most of the time. So Suzanne goes on to ask Piper if she likes spicy food. Piper's like, yeah, sure. Suzanne lets Piper know that she had an ex-girlfriend here in the prison that was Mexican and she really likes spicy food. She tells Piper that girl has gone now, but she left these 3 peppers behind. She's offering those peppers to Piper because she heard that she was looking for something spicy. Piper tells Suzanne, I have nothing to trade you for that. To which Suzanne says, listen, people forget that we were all new here once. It's a gift. And that's really kind. She tells Piper that it's good to know you ain't alone, which I think was really sweet. And one of the first acts of true kindness that Piper receives in the prison. And we're back in the past with another Piper flashback. Larry is praising this cleanse now, how good he feels, how much better he's pooping, like everything. He's just loving the cleanse now. Raving, raving, raving how great it is. But Piper is ready to bail. She's like, what if we only did it for 5 days? It's too much for her already. She's done. She tells Larry, it's not a competition. You can't win the master cleanse. To which Larry says, can't I? I think that's funny because I like to turn things into competitions. So, I mean, I think you can win the master cleanse. And honestly, if it was a competition, then Larry wins because Piper's quitting. So, Larry, you win the master cleanse. I'm going to give that one to you. Come to find out, Piper's been cheating and eating food on the cleanse. Larry smells her breath and finds out that she's been eating pork rinds. She's like, I know, I'm so sorry. Piper is weak. Piper has no discipline when it comes to sticking to something, which, I mean, I can relate to a little bit. I can definitely be like that sometimes. But Larry isn't really mad. He's like, all right, I guess the cleanse is over. He ends the conversation with the fact that he totally wins the master cleanse. He goes, and by the way, I totally win. In the next scene, we're back in the prison, and Piper is seen crying at the top of her bunk as Pornstache walks by. And he's like, aw, don't be so sad. Poor little baby. In that baby voice, like, grow up. That's gross. I don't even know you like that. It gives me weird vibes. Weird. Don't like it. He says to her, dinner's in 5. I hear it's a big one. Yum, yum. Which I think is incredibly mean because he knows that she's being starved out. So is he taunting her? Rude. Not a fan of Pornstache. Come to find out, Piper's not crying because she's sad. She's crying because she's chewing up peppers and spitting them into this little rag so she can strain out the juices for something that she's making in this cup. It looks really disgusting. It makes me want to gag, honestly. Literally. Okay. So in the next scene, we're seeing a feast of food. We're seeing green broccoli. We're seeing lasagna. We're seeing corn on the cob. We see chicken. So the kitchen has cooked up a feast because of the broken freezer. The women are going to be eating good today. Online, we see Taystee. She's talking to Maria. She's talking about her hairdo and she's telling Maria, ain't nobody got this. It's that hotness. Taystee is really feeling herself. She's telling Maria and Gloria, my hair is as yellow as that corn right there, girl. To which they're all laughing. It's fun. It's a good time. So Piper walks into the cafeteria and she just sits down at a table. She doesn't even try to go to the counter to try to get food. She just sits at a table alone. In the background, we see Alex walk up to her and pass her something wrapped in white. Norma clocked it though. Norma saw that happen and she's looking over like, what? Who do you think you are giving her something when Red is starving her out? Alex goes and sits next to Taystee and Piper unwraps the paper to find out that Alex passed her a piece of cornbread. But just as quickly as Piper unwrapped it, she wrapped it right back up and threw it in the trash while looking at Alex in the face. Like, I don't want anything from you. Thank you very much. I can take care of myself. Norma seemed impressed with that. Her face looked like, okay. Next, we see Red in the back of the kitchen with Miss Claudette. She's bringing out a bottle of hooch and 2 cups, to which Miss Claudette says, no thanks, love. I'm too old for hooch. But Red says, don't insult me. It's single malt, 12 years old beer. Let's enjoy this. Hooch, by the way, is a way that the inmates sometimes make alcohol in the prison. They use bread and fruit and they let it get fermented until it becomes alcohol. And then they drink it just to help ease the stress of living in prison day to day. One of the most famous hooch makers in the prison is Miss Poussey, which we will see later. We're back with another Red flashback. This time we're seeing her walking in her neighborhood of Queens, New York. She's got a cart full of bread. And she sees the mean girls there walking with the Queen Bee, Regina George at the front. So Red kind of hides because she's embarrassed. They're out there walking without her. They didn't invite her. They left her out. She looks pretty sad. I mean, who wouldn't be sad from being left out when you're trying to get yourself into a group of friends? She literally has tears in her eyes as she sees the ladies walking without her. You can see her squint her eyes like she's trying not to cry. She's trying to be strong. Red makes sure that she walks in a way that she's going to end up crossing these ladies. So when she runs into them, she's storming at them. And they're like, oh no, it's the one without culture. They're judging her. When Red meets up with Mean Girls, Regina George goes, Red. And Red immediately goes back to her joke. Red says, and the penguin goes, he's not an eggplant. He's retarded. It's fucking funny. And Regina George is like, it's just not, which I agree. It's really not funny. I don't get it. I personally don't get it, but okay. It's a recurring joke. We're going to hear it a few times, and I still don't think it's funny, but okay. I'm with Regina George here, but I digress. Regina George says, the joke is really not funny, but your head makes me giggle, though. Making fun of Red's hair, which, you know, Red is a very prideful woman, and she does not take kindly to that. She immediately just rages out and shoves Regina George right in the tit, basically giving us our title for the episode, Tit Punch. Even though she didn't technically punch her, she shoved her. But yes, she pushed her so hard that she busted her implant. Red's husband is so mad when he finds out. He's like, after all they've done for us, this is what you go and do? You pushed his wife? You pushed Regina George? Her husband loved those tits. Like, you ruined them. They're going to be so mad at us. What are you doing? You're messing up our whole thing here. Red's husband asks her if she counted to 10. He reminds her that she's supposed to count to 10. So I feel like that's telling us right there that Red has an anger problem or an emotional regulation problem. And she knows that she needs to watch it and be careful with her reactions. However, in this moment, she definitely lost control and did not count to 10. So when her husband asks her, did you count to 10? You're supposed to count to 10. Red responds angrily, I never even wanted to talk to those people. You made me. And so her husband's like, well, why would you do such a thing? Why would you push her like that? Red says, because they left me out. They made fun of me. Oh, right there. I feel like so often you can see people's hurt and pain so much through the actions of what they do and things that they say as adults. Right in this moment, talking about they left her out and they made fun of her. I feel like I can see the little 10-year-old Red, like, just sad because she's gotten left out of some game on the playground. It's really sad, you know? It's just a core feeling of rejection that she's feeling and an insecurity. Nobody wants to feel like that. So yeah, she reacted poorly, but, you know, I can understand her reaction. Red goes on to exclaim, no matter how hard you try and how much we want it, there's the people who serve the bread and the people who eat the bread. So she feels as if she's the lower class in the situation. She's the people who serve the bread, and she doesn't deserve to sit at the table with the people who eat the bread. She says that for once it would be nice if her husband would be on her side. She looks really lonely in this moment. She just wants to be understood. And I really feel for Red here. Her husband tells her that he is on her side. He says, I'm with you, and they're going to figure it out. It's bad, it's really bad, but they're going to figure it out together. He tells Red that they want $60,000 to make up for the boob damage that Red did. Red is like, no boob job costs $60,000. That's crazy. Her husband says this one does. So basically, they're padding that bill for the aggravation and everything else, I guess. But actions have consequences. We should all be more mindful of our emotions and regulating them and not acting out based on emotion all the time. Sometimes those actions we can't get back, and then you have to deal with the consequences. Red is so dejected, and she's just saying, the women, they're just so mean. To which her husband responds and says, so are the men that they married. So these are some dangerous, mean people that they're dealing with, and they're in now. So they have to play the game or they're going to get harmed in the process. But her husband assures her that they're going to figure something out. They always do. Back at the prison, we see Piper, still a little bit upset about her hair, but she's walking over humbly to Red with something in her hand. Gina stops her at the door, basically acting like she's Red's bouncer or something. And Piper's like, I'm sorry, but this is only going to take a second. She gives Red a jalapeno rub from the ingredients that she's been collecting around the prison. It's supposed to help with her back pain. She tells Red that she made it herself, that the peppers are going to be good for her sore muscles, and that the cocoa butter will make it feel gentle on her skin. She goes on to say that her dad, who has sciatica, a specific form of back pain, swears by it. She has a similar product in her product line back at home, and he loves it. It works very well for his back. Red is completely ignoring Piper, by the way. She's taking it in, but she is not responding at all, not acknowledging her at all. So Piper walks away, not knowing if it helped, hurt, what. She just walks away. When Red gets up from her desk, she kind of smiles as she picks up Piper's bottle that says for Red's back. She's smiling, like she's thankful and glad that she was able to get the situation solved in a way that was helpful for her. So then the guards are going around doing their count. When C.O. Bennett comes in contact with Daya during the count, they make eye contact, little lingering eye contact. Nothing is said, but we're watching the situation develop. After the count is done, Daya pulls back her blanket on her bed to find a piece of gum. Looks like C.O. Bennett left her a piece of gum after all, because he likes her. That's the beginning of their little love story, or quote-unquote love story, but we'll get there. The next thing that we see is Larry at home. He's grabbing snacks and he's sitting down to watch something on TV, looking at a picture of Piper and him. He's flipping through the channels and then he stops on Mad Men. And he decides to stay on Mad Men. He flips the picture down of him and Piper as if what she doesn't know won't hurt her. If she can't see it, she doesn't know it's happening. And he proceeds to cheat on her with their favorite show, Mad Men, and watch it without her. A sign of things to come. Spoilers. Back at the prison, Caputo is telling Healy that the new freezer costs more than his car. Caputo kind of insinuates here that there was never a Freon leak. If there was that much Freon leaking, somebody would have probably been dead already. So he thinks that they've been played by Red in order to get a new freezer, which maybe. I don't know if it's confirmed, but sure does look that way. In the next scene, we see Piper sitting alone at the cafeteria table, eating nothing, just sitting quietly. And we see Morello come over with 2 trays, and one she sets in front of Piper. Morello tells Piper, they said to give you this. Piper is shocked and pleased and thankful that she finally gets to eat. She's like, oh my God, it worked? Piper's eating this Eggo like it's the best thing she's ever had in her entire life, which I'm sure after days of not eating, it must be. Over on the cafeteria line, though, Alex is waiting for her food, and Gina is completely skipping over her, saying, next. Now Alex is getting starved because she crossed the picket line. She gave Piper food, but she was not supposed to have any. So now Alex is the one that's getting starved. Red is just in the background staring Alex down like, yup, I did that. And what? You're not going to be eating, so deal with it. Alex is going to have to figure out how to deal with that herself as well. The next thing that we see back in the past, we're in another Red flashback. Red is at the counter preparing some meat when her husband walks in with the big scary mob guys. Regina George's husband is like staring Red down and Red looks terrified. He then instructs the other guys to put what looks like maybe bodies in Red's freezer. So again, with the freezer in the prison, Red is dealing with the freezer issue, and in the past, Red is dealing with the freezer issue. But this time, it's the mob putting perhaps bodies in her freezer. So she's asking her husband, what's in those bags? And he says to her, you don't want to know. He assures her that it's going to be fine and that it's going to make things right for them. I guess he thinks that being in good with these people is protection for them, safety for them, money for them. I'm not sure. Red says it doesn't feel right. Her husband says he promises it's going to be fine. He's going to work it out. And again, Regina George's husband stares Red down on his way out the door. Who are you trying to intimidate a woman? That's so rude. That transitions us right back to the prison where we see Red cracking up at movie night. We're in the multi-purpose room. And it looks like most of the prisoners that we've met are in here. Everybody's watching a projector screen, and most of them have headphones so that they can hear the movie. Most of them. That's not including Piper, who does not have headphones. It's actually really nice to see the ladies here cracking up. It's a rare moment where we get to see them all laughing and joking. You even see Flocka and Taystee sharing a laugh together after they done fought over a king cone. Right now at movie night, all is well. Everybody's laughing together. Eventually, Suzanne comes over to Piper and sits down beside her. She offers her one of her earbuds so that she can hear the movie in one ear and Suzanne can hear the movie in another ear. It's really a nice act of kindness that she does for Piper again. Now Piper's in on the joke and she gets to laugh along with everybody else. But that's when Suzanne decides to put her hand on Piper's thigh, caressing it in a way that makes Piper think, oh crap, are we together now? Are you my prison girlfriend now? Did I just sign a contract by taking your earbud? Crap, what have I got myself into? And that's when we get our orange screen. That's the end of the episode. Now, like I said at the beginning of the episode, IMDb rated this one at a 7.9. I would say that I would agree with that. I also will give this episode a 7.9. I think it's really important to the story. We get to see some background on Red, which helps us to understand what kind of person she is and some of the things that she's been through. It gives us a window into how she became the person that she is today and what motivates her to do the things that she does today. I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed that it moved the story along. We're starting to see some interaction with Suzanne and Taystee and some of the other inmates that we haven't gotten too much time with yet. I enjoy the show as we get to know more inmates. So this episode definitely opened up that world for us a little bit more. So I will give it a 7.9. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for hanging with me in Yadda Space. Don't forget to comment your favorite lines from the episode and let me know what your personal rating is for this week. Mine, again, was a 7.9. I would love to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. What is your rating for episode 2, Tit Punch? So that's going to do it for this week. Thanks again for joining me on the journey back to Litchfield. If you aren't already, please make sure you are following the Yadda Space Pod on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, TikTok, so you don't miss out on future episodes. Also, like the theme song says, it's Yadda Space with 2 E's. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll catch up with y'all next time here at Yadda Space.
Hey, welcome friends to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda here, let's set the pace. This is a rewatch podcast, so let's begin. Orange is the new black is where we dive in. Taystee's wisdom sets the tone. Us higher. Spoilers everywhere, so be warned. Super fast, please come on board. Susan's special mind and all these ideas because they think if everything's truly as it is. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah. Oh, 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 oh. Let's kitchen moves the game. She keeps the flame. Aleida's hustle never quits. Looks the towns are gems every bit.